the old adage that only will do you right. And to a large extent, we know that's true. In terms of building copying, they don't give you everything away. And that leads us to the in fact, I would welcome this feature because it would save a lot of work. So copying is not without its risk. We need to understand why we understand. In this presentation, I'll explain. And it's very interesting that you're asking me something, but you think I've missed if there's some hidden with confidence. I've used it many times. So the fine motion, that's one. Difference, quite a lot of what some of you would consider to be supervision, and some of you would consider to be not supervision. For instance, if we look at the first one case, this body position is completely upright. This another one upright, another one upright. Now, one thing you do when you look at it together, that's not right. This would suggest it's not necessary. If we look at the British system, we see one flying the water and one going out of the water, and we see, again, different positions at the finish. Look at this picture. Which is correct? Do we want to use legs for straight arm? Or do we want to use more legs for the bent arm? Or do we want to copy what's in the middle? Perhaps we can answer some of those questions at the end of it. How long ago, 200 years? They knew that you had to do it together. And they made a technical emphasis on certain parts of the surgeon, probably the biggest part in those days, along the strength of the back. I put the slide in to demonstrate that they suffered from the back problem 200 years ago, just the same as we do today. They did something about it, and it seems that we don't seem to do as much about it. We tend to row with a very round back, as you saw in the previous slide. So it's not surprising that the volume of work and training, compared with what they did 200 years ago, we're not really addressing the back problem. We've seen these photographs in all the old boat houses throughout the world. The way, the posture, the way they rode might not be to our liking. They all did it. They all did it together. They all did the same, and they did it to protect the spine. And sometimes their styles were way out. We would not think of rowing like that today. But they all did the same thing, and they did it together. This graph, there are two graphs actually. This graph is always a favourite of mine. It's been well worn and well used, as you can see from the way that some of the print have worn off. What it does, it shows you the amount of time spent in the water and the amount of time spent out of the water. It shows you the stroke, the recovery. The side, it shows you how fast the boat's moving. It's taken on a film. A film had the time plotted on the film, so it was very easy to plot the speed of the boat. So if you look at the line through the middle, this line, that is the average speed at which the boat was travelling. And you can see it was like 18.5 feet per second, as shown on the left-hand column. The curved line is the actual speed. That's the speed that the boat actually travelled, how it moved through the water. And so you can see at the beginning of the stroke, it's marked with A, the catch, quite a rapid deceleration of the boat. Now we all know that happens, because we can see it. You can see the boat check. To have it confirmed, we see the boat accelerate, and then B, the finish of the stroke, we see a lot of speed. Probably because the crew lost pressure at the finish because the blades came out of the water. They were unable to sustain power right through. That isn't always so obvious to see. And so it's useful to have it scientifically proven that that does happen. Blades come out of the water, and then you get an acceleration of the speed of the boat. The boat actually goes faster when the blades are out of the water than it does when they're in the water. And that is put down to the crew as they move forward, so the weight of the body is moving against the run of the boat, actually pulling the boat underneath them. And if you look at the bottom graph, this was done at the same time. The first one was done by Oxford University under Jumbo Edwards in the 1960s. The bottom chart was done at the same time by Carl Adam in Ratzeburg. And so you can see the same deceleration as the blades go in, a college crew compared with an Olympic champion crew. What you don't see is the loss of pressure at the finish of the stroke. Now one would expect that because of the quality of the two crews. Along the bottom line is the power, and I've identified that as kilograms, weight of an oarsman. And up the side you have meters per second how fast the boat travels. Now we all know this fact, but it's nice just to look at it in figures. You can see, for instance, if you look at a cock's pair, if you double its power and make it a cock's four, it only travels at something like 15% more speed. And if you double it again and make it into an 8, you gain 1 meter a second for quadrupling your power. So if you're running down a course in a race and you want to go just a little bit faster, you have to put in so much more power to do it. Now, it's often a thought that's overlooked. And when we come to race and when we look at how one would race, how one would hold race speed at the end of the talk, then we'll have more appreciation of that graph. There are three factors most important for rowing. And whatever way you row and whatever you do, these three factors always come into play. And that is how much power, how fast the blade goes through the water, how much power you apply, and how long the stroke is. A long stroke will move the boat further per stroke, and the rate of striking. How many strokes that you row. Now if you row with all three of those things at maximum intensity, as hard as you can, it's a very strong crew that can row more than 10 before you get a very rapid deceleration. The onset of fatigue is quite rapid and the boat speed drops. Of course, to row 2,000 metres, we need to row 200 strokes. And so a blend of those three factors, an equilibrium, is what we're looking for. Length, that's something that is controlled partly by mechanics. And rate is something which we can achieve quite easily. Power is really where we have to look the most at technique, and it's where styles and methods change most. So just look at length of stroke, mechanics of the length of stroke. Here is the catch. You row through to the finish, and we move pin to pin. We row a short stroke, we don't move as far. Basic mechanics. If we look at the stroke at this point, blade travelling in this direction, and the boat moving in this direction. And we know that the further you go beyond that point, the less efficient, and so that if the blade came to this point, it would be working against the direction of the boat. So length of stroke is really controlled for us, and it's controlled by how far the oarsman reaches forward and by the length of the oar. Here we have some power moving this way and some moving that way. What we can say is that the most efficient stroke is equidistant either side, because only when it's at 90 degrees is it at the most effective part. So the length of stroke that we row is really controlled to a large extent by these simple mechanics. So we say that the length of catch, we want to aim at 45 degrees. As a coach you might want to make it 40 or maybe 48, but 45 degrees is a good place from which to start, which means you have to reach a little bit beyond 40 to actually lock on at 45 degrees. And at the finish, in rowing, of course, the body gets in the way, so we can't reach more than maybe 130 degrees. So those things are controlled for us. We can control the oarsman's reach, and we can coach the oarsman's reach, and we can make full use of this length by getting the oarsman in the right position. But as far as length of stroke is concerned, it's the mechanics which are the guiding factor. Rate of striking is something that's very easy to achieve. We don't need to spend a lot of time to do it. You can achieve a high rate of striking from a winter's training of 20, 22, 24. We can achieve 52 within a very short space of time. Certainly within 2 weeks you could achieve that. Of course the problem is that when the rate climbs, the quality of the work deteriorates, and that's the thing that you have to coach against, deterioration when rates go. So rate is something that we can push to one side. We can leave it until the end of the program. Power is where it counts. It's how to apply power. How to power in any dynamic movement, in any sport, has to begin with legs first. We apply, and we go through the sequence of strength of muscle in that order, and we get an overlap. We talk about the legs first, we talk about opening the back, and we talk about drawing with the shoulders, and then the arms, in that sequence. But we do need an overlap. And the more that overlap is, the more power we apply. I'm going to look at hand position. This is quite important, and it's more important than people appreciate. It's worth just looking at it more closely. We all know that we need the outside hand right on the end of the oar, because that's where we get most leverage. The inside hand is so the outside hand is the hand which does most of the pulling. It's where the most power is. So we're going to use that. It's the inside hand that we use to control the oar. And so we hold the oar on the outside hand in the fingers, and we hold it more in the palm on the inside hand. And of course that is convenient because it takes up the angle of the oar, it takes up that slack. Mechanically, the way you draw the oar through is influenced by where your hands are. Ideally, you want to be drawing in a straight line. You want to draw through straight. You don't want to create a big arc. Of course, that's influenced by your span and overlap, but from the point of view of hands, we're just going to look at this sequence of photos and just see